South Africa has one of the most violent and complex cash-in-transit crime problems in the entire world. From opportunistic robbers in the 1970s to militarized multi-million rand operations today, these heists have evolved alongside the country itself. So then, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the convoluted world of cash-in-transit heist in South Africa, discover how it started and explore how it's become one of the most deadly crime rackets in the country's modern history.
There's been an attempted cash-in-transit heist in Dwedwe, north of Durban. Let's cross live now to our reporter Simpema.
Cash-in-transit heists are not just crimes of opportunity in South Africa. They are rooted in the country's history of militarization, inequality, and displacement. So to fully understand how we got to this point in terms of cash-in-transit heists today, we must go all the way back to post-World War II South Africa. Members of the Colored Corps, a military regiment that was deployed during World War II, had just come back after the war had ended and had settled in District 6, Cape Town, to try and find work. And then during the 1960s, a lot of these people would be displaced and removed from the area into townships such as Kukuletu in an attempt by the apartheid government to make District 6 a whites-only area. The problem with this, though, is that these ex-military members had already formed gangs with other people in those areas while they were still in District 6, and this fundamental destruction of their social structure would inevitably lead to a spike in crime. And because these were World War II veterans, they had a lot of weapons that they either, number one, collected from the war, or number two, just straight up stole. So around this time is when we would start to see the first type of cash-in-transit robbery, which would target business owners and bank employees when they were transporting payroll money from the bank to the site of the business. Things would continue like this from the 60s into the 70s until there was a serious uptick in organized crime in the early 70s, leading to one of the first proper cash-in-transit robberies in 1971. This was a heist orchestrated by two amateurs who would manage to get away with 240,000 1970s rands, which in today's money is 24.8 million. These two men would later be caught and sentenced to 14 years in prison each, but the fact that they were able to get away with 24.8 million rand, I think, is a perfect example of the allure of CIT heist. The kind of just easy money. And these first opportunistic heist of lightly armored cash transport vehicles would mark the beginning or the birth of one of the most deadly crime rackets in South African history.
That deadly cash-in-transit heist in Dawn Park in Ekurhuleni, police announced a short while ago.
Like I've already talked about on the channel, 1980s South Africa was an absolute dumpster fire with political uprisings happening kind of like everywhere. The apartheid regime's response to these uprisings would be to declare a state of emergency that would give the South African Defence Force and the South African Police just way more power. This meant that there was a considerable drop in the amount of CIT heists that were happening during this time, simply because law enforcement was just cracking down way harder on crime. I'm not saying they didn't happen, they just didn't happen as often as they did in the 70s. These crackdowns were kind of futile in the long run, though, as the apartheid regime would topple and fall apart in 1994 when the country's first democratic elections were held. The formation of democratic South Africa would lead to the dismantling and reorganization of a lot of apartheid security structures, which would lead to a temporary weakening of law enforcement in the country around the time that we got democracy. Around this time, banks were also handling a lot more money than they ever had before, so there was a lot of money circulating around. This partly had to do with wage reforms, but there are a lot of other factors contributing to there being just a lot of money circulating around the mid-90s in South Africa. A lot of cash money. These two factors, law enforcement temporarily being weakened because of the reorganization of security structures, and there being more money circulating around South Africa at the time, more cash money, would create the perfect environment in which organized crime could flourish. This gave them the opportunity to use the fact that local policing was a bit weakened to consolidate forces and network across provinces. And the banking industry would feel the consequences of this consolidation when there would be a huge spike in CIT heist in 1996. These heists would transform from petty opportunistic robberies to well organized and painstakingly planned out heists that would get executed with military precision. This is when stuff started to get a bit more serious now. These heists would be so well planned, in fact, that there would actually be a clear chain of command, with different teams specializing in stuff like surveillance, getting away, and money laundering. The CIT heist records was now a well-oiled machine that would only grow more and more violent as time went on.
Well, the officers were ready to pounce when the robbers arrived at 5 o'clock this morning. They moved in after they'd emptied the SPV van. An undisclosed amount of cash was then recovered.
By the time that the 2010s rolled around, organized crime had developed and grown so much in the country that these heists started to look more like military operations than simple robberies. Around 2017, robbers started using commercial-grade explosives to gain access into CIT vehicles. Around the same time, there would also be a notable uptick in the amount of cross-pavement heists that would take place. These happen at ATMs when security guards are delivering and picking up money. CIT operations would now include up to 30 members using multiple vehicles and powerful weapons to block the roads and entrap the security guards, who obviously would not stand a chance when it came to firing power. I mean, up to 30 people versus a small crew in a confined space. I think we can guess what would happen in that scenario. So in short, by the end of the 2010s, cash in transit heist in South Africa had undergone a full transformation. What started in the 1970s as the opportunistic robberies of bank employees and light armored vehicles had, over just 4 decades, evolved into militarized multi-million rand operations that included stuff like explosives, convoys of cars, and dozens of heavily armored attackers. And that brings us to modern day, where CIT heists remain one of the most violent and stubborn crimes in South Africa, and where both the CIT industry and law enforcement are locked in an arm race to try and stay ahead of organized crime.
We are actually at the scene where we understand that the cash in transit heist happened. Now, according to
in the 2020s, the violent nature of cash in transit heists still persisted, but there was a bit of a shift in how these operations were carried out. The amount of corruption within and around the industry intensified greatly, with police, CIT, security, and industry insiders providing information to criminal syndicates, enabling precision hits with higher chances of success. We also started to see ATMs and cash centers being bombed and attacked, which represented a diversification of the targets that were being hit by these syndicates. The industry tried to fight back by using specialized task teams from the Hawks and the CITASA, and also improving route discipline, and it did kind of work, forcing syndicates to change their tactics and target smaller hits to avoid getting caught. The armoring of CIT vehicles has also improved to make it a bit harder for criminals to access them using explosives, and stuff like die packs have also been implemented into cross-pavement cash packs to stain any money that gets stolen. The vetting of employees that work in the CIT industry, that's also been improved to decrease the chances of corruption within the workforce. And these tactics have apparently been working wonders. Like I said, there was a 21% decrease in the amount of CIT robberies from 2017 to 2023, which is accredited to law enforcement and the industry really stepping up and working together to fight this problem. But despite the decrease in the number of heists occurring, the CIT racket is still viable just because of the simple fact that we still use a lot of cash in South Africa. Even though CIT vehicles have better armoring and tracking to try and kind of deter criminals, these guys are still motivated by just the sheer amount of cash you could potentially walk away with if you hit a successful heist. And with convictions for CIT heists being relatively low, there isn't really much standing in the way of these syndicates continuing to operate.
I'm going out. I might not come back, but it's life for everyone in CIT.
Financial institutions and businesses have to pay more in insurance premiums just because of how frequent and severe cash in transit heists have become. Businesses also face operational disturbances if a heist were to occur on the premises, which obviously is going to cut into their profit margins. And we've talked about this on the channel. Once a business starts losing money somewhere, it's going to reflect in the price they charge you for their product. So in a roundabout way, I would go out and say that CIT heists do kind of contribute to inflation by increasing the amount of cost that businesses have to incur. On a more human level, the immense loss of life that has happened because of these heists, it can't be overlooked. In 2023 alone, 23 CIT guards tragically lost their lives because of such incidents, highlighting the amount of danger that these sons, fathers, brothers and uncles have to put themselves through on a daily basis just to be able to provide for their families. Suspects are also not immune to being injured or killed during these attacks. A prime example of which being a 2023 shootout in Makaro, Limpopo, leading to the death of 18 suspected robbers. And obviously, they are the ones who caused the entire thing in the first place, but that is still an immense loss of life. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything more here. You can interpret that how you want to. Suspects still lose their lives. But what I think is the worst aspect, the most hard-hitting aspect of these heists for me, is the fact that innocent bystanders who have nothing to do with anything to do with money or the CIT industry or anything could lose their lives and have lost their lives just because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Just last month, September 2025, 2 innocent bystanders were shot and killed during a CIT heist. 2 souls lost for no reason whatsoever. Even those lucky enough to survive these attacks physically unharmed still experience intense long-term psychological effects, leaving them anxiety-ridden and depressed for what might be the rest of their life. One way or another, there just doesn't seem to be a way to walk away from a CIT incident scot-free. Whether it's the threat of physical harm, the loss of colleagues or loved ones, or the lingering psychological scars that haunt survivors long after the event. CIT heists are more than just headlines. They are violent, multifaceted events that leave lasting impact on people, places, and institutions across South Africa. I hope you guys enjoy the video. I encourage you guys to comment your opinion down below. Comment what touched you in the video. Comment whatever you want to comment. Comment your thoughts down below. I want to hear them. We are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We are currently at 5,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for that. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Click the bell icon if you have. Like the video if you enjoyed it. And until the next one, goodbye.